All right, let's review quickly if we could. And at any point, as I say every week, at any point if you have a problem or a question or a comment or confused, whatever it is, just stop me or time out or whatever. And again, I have no agenda as far as time on this. I don't care when we finish it. We started this my first Wednesday here, and it's the month of May, and we're just getting into it good. And if y'all need a break from it at some point, say, hey, look, this is interesting, but our brains hurt, as mine does when I study it. Can we go to something less mentally difficult? And we can go any direction you guys want to go. So if not, we'll move on, and we will review the moral argument. And can somebody tell me what the moral argument is in your own words? It's 3 quick points, basically. You can put it any way you would want to put it if you're sitting with a buddy at lunch, you know, and they're angry atheists, as most who are atheists are, seem to be agitated.
Every people group have a code of some kind of right or wrong.
Yeah, that's more, yes, true, yes. So so then you would go into that and say, why is that? Why does everybody have a moral code? Our Bible gives us an answer. As a theist, a Christian, we have an answer. Romans chapter 2, 14 and 15, God wrote morality on your heart and in your mind. That's why worldwide there's moral code, okay? If you're a non-theist or an atheist, you have to answer the same questions we do. We don't have more questions to answer than they do. They don't have more evidence than we have. We all have the same evidence. We interpret it differently, obviously. So you go to somebody and you say, well, worldwide we have morality. Worldwide, it isn't exactly the same, but it's pretty close. Our explanation is Romans 2. What is yours? And we base that and we say, based on that, morality everywhere, we believe there's a God. Because without a God, we can't explain morality. This is my favorite argument for the existence of God. And I'm not sure after tonight we'll wrap up morality and the moral argument. And next week, I don't really know. There's different directions we could go, but I'm thinking about spending a week or two on discernment and judgment. Because that word keeps getting thrown around as if it's a bad thing to judge. The word judge is evil. It isn't. There are different types of judging. So we may spend some time on that and just look at absolute truth, which kind of goes with this, and then talk about judgment. I'm not sure yet exactly, and if y'all got recommendations, then I'm happy to hear them. So we as theists or Christians, I won't say Christians. A lot of people are theists that aren't Christians. I would say most people are theists. I think by birth, everybody's a theist, according to the Bible, which is more proof. I mean, your 3 biggest world religions that take up most people in the world, the top 3 religions are all monotheistic. Did y'all know that? Judaism, Christianity, Islam. They're all monotheistic. I don't think that's an accident. Does that make sense? You know what I'm getting at by that? Yeah, I mean, most people in the world that belong to a religion belong to one of those 3. And the top 3 are all monotheistic. So, why? I mean, yeah, obviously we think 2 of them are misinterpreting information, but why is it that most people, even if they're not Christian, they're theistic? According to the Bible, it's because God bears witness to himself, through themselves, from birth. We know it from birth. So here we go. So we said, yes, based on morality, there's a God, and they try to argue, and they come back and said, okay, we give it to you. We can't argue with the fact that there's culture, there's morality in every culture, but we're going to say that cultures themselves define that morality. And then we object to that, and we said, well, worldwide, they're basically the same. Why the coincidences? So problem number 1 with their objections. So we give them morality. They answer back and say, yes, okay, we can't argue, but America's culture and morality is different than India's. That's their objection. Because we all separately figured out morality on our own. And we say nonsense. Because everybody's basically the same. objection number one. Objection number two was, if that's the case, and each culture defines morality, which culture gets to decide which one dominates or is superior? Last week we used a very specific country to illustrate this. Who was it? Germany, Nazi Germany. So we discussed Nazi Germany. We discussed that Hitler was enabled by evolution and Darwinism. Do y'all remember that? That's what paved the way. Darwinism crept into the schools in Germany, and I couldn't get into all this, but there was even a guy that eventually worked for Hitler, but when it started creeping in and started really getting big, this guy was a teacher in high schools in Germany, and he was warning the leaders in Germany, hey, if this takes over evolution, or the erasure of God from the culture, and he basically said, if God gets erased under the German culture, we're really going to pay for this. And they ignored him, basically. So Hitler was enabled by Darwinian evolution. Here's another minor objection under point number two. If slavery was accepted as a norm in the South, so if the South, so you've already got within one culture that has claimed they define their own morality, the American culture, and even now you already kind of have a North and South version, don't you? A little bit? So in the South we said, well, in the North too, to some extent, but in the South we said there's nothing wrong with slavery. It benefits us. That's one of the arguments. We as a culture define morality because it benefited us to do so. So the Southern culture said it benefits us to enslave people so that we can make more money, or for whatever reason. And it was right, not against any kind of law. If that was accepted, now this is really, really big in an argument. If that was accepted in the Southern culture and defined in the Southern culture as being morally okay, and it was, and I don't know where Christians were, we were quiet, then when Martin Luther King, I said this last week, when he came around in the early 60s and started revolting against slavery, who was immoral? Was it?
According to the Southern culture,
He was. He was actually immoral, and according to the Southern culture and what we defined as right and wrong, he should have been put in prison because he was breaking the rules, right? So, if you take their argument that cultures define morality, if you take it as far as it will go, you end up with something that we should be familiar with, the Southern people defining this as okay, and what it led to. And you throw that up in the face of somebody that's a right-wing liberal and tell them that based on your argument, MLK was an immoral man because he was fighting for freedom, they're going to have a conniption fit. Because I'm telling you guys, they're not thinking logically where their argument takes them. And it really does you a lot of good to take their argument, go home and think on it, and see where it's going to go, and go back to them and say, if I take this as far down this road as it'll take me, here's where I end up. What do you think about that? Because this is your decision. This is where you want society to go. And a lot of times they haven't gone that far. They've stopped. Just like with socialism. You know, college is going to be free for everybody. I was eating lunch the other day, and a 20-year-old, 19, 20, 21-year-old walks in with his mom, eating lunch, having a nice little lunch together, and then he opened his mouth, which was regrettable, because he said, well, Mom, I can't go back to school unless Bernie Sanders wins. And look, if you're voting Democratic here tonight, this isn't, I won't vote Democratic or Republican. I will vote person. I care nothing about labels, honestly. If you ask me what would you like to be called as a believer, I would say disciple. I would prefer that over any denominational name. Because Baptist isn't in the Bible, or Methodist, or Anglican. None of them are. Or Lutheran, that's named after a person. Do we have a person, somebody over here? Kind of weird. I'm jumping, okay? So he sits down and he says, Mom, if Bernie doesn't win, I don't get to go. This was his frame of mind. If Bernie doesn't win, I can't go back to college. And she's like, well, that stinks. You know, basically, I guess I'll have to vote for Bernie so that you can go back to school. And then she said, but why don't you just, why don't you just work your way through school the way we did? back in the day.
Amen.
And I thought, yeah. And there's a booth, okay? And I'm here and he's here. So our backs are like that far apart, and I can hear what he's saying. And then she said something else that I couldn't quite make out. And you know what his answer was? Mom, that's just plain hurtful. And I thought, dude, you are a grown man. You can't use that word unless you're dying. Nothing's hurtful. Don't get into that. And so I had to listen to this conversation about socialism. And she did correct him and say, well, son, who do you think is going to pay for your free college? And he said, I don't know. I just don't want to pay for it. And I thought, take you out, kid.
There's more of them out there than you think.
No, there's lots. And I wanted to, we had a kid come over to play basketball with us, and they were mostly young, but one came who was a god brother of the other one. He was voting Democratic. And I don't know if I told you this, but he sat down beside me in my backyard. This was 2 weeks ago. And in our little lawn chair, and the young guys are playing, and this guy comes over, introduces himself, and he said, so are you voting for Hillary? And I said, what? And he said, are you voting for so-and-so? And I laughed, and I looked at him, and I said, you're not kidding? He said, no, man. And I said, why don't I vote socialism? He's 21 years old. He said, what's socialism? And I said, and I explained it monetarily. Man, I'm chasing a rabbit. He didn't get it. I said, let me break it down in basketball terms. They're playing 21. Okay? Keith over there is winning. He's got like 16 points. Well, this kid over here's got none. I said, what we need to do is every time Keith scores, that kid gets one of his points. Or both of them until he catches up to him. And he's like, well, that isn't fair, is it? And I said, well, no, it's not fair. But that is socialism. So I yelled out, I was like, guys, why don't y'all play some Bernie Sanders basketball? And they all know me. They started laughing. So he got it, and he said, so you're saying both of my candidates are kind of that way? And I said, absolutely. So anyway, just read. Educate yourself. So anyway, number 3. So objection number 1 is there are worldwide coincidences, and there's no way cultures define their own morality. Objection number 2, if cultures define their own morality, which culture gets to decide the one that is superior? Because that is going to happen. Objection number 3, and we'll get to the Bible here in a second. We're going to go to Judges chapter 2. Cultural relativism basically breaks down into individual relativism. Okay, so let's define that. Individual relativism, so y'all get a mental picture here. You've got a United States of America, and we have claimed that we know what's right and wrong because we defined it. No help from God. We defined it. And we defined it because it benefited us to do so. That's the argument. So you take the United States of America away from all other cultures, and we're all a separate little entity. Nobody from the outside can look in and say, you were right or you were wrong for having slaves or whatever. They can't do that because this is our culture and we define what's right and wrong. But when you do that and you accept that as okay, yes, the United States has its own morality, nobody mess with them, they've separated themselves, every country has, that breaks down into individual relativism. So now tell me this isn't where we are. When that's accepted over time, every individual within that society then says, well, if the great lawgiver is society and not God, why are his rights bigger than mine? Right? Why can't I go into that bathroom if I identify myself that way today? And then I say, well, you can't, grown man, go into that bathroom because my 2 little girls are in there. And you're biologically a dude, so you can't go in there. And they cry out for their rights, right? Well, this isn't, you're discriminating. Well, absolutely I'm discriminating. And it isn't always a bad word. You're a dude, they're not, I'm discriminating against you. It's a girl's bathroom. So they argue for their rights, and I argue for mine. What has just happened? Individual right. My daughter has rights, my wife has rights, you have rights. Whose rights are the greatest? What ultimately is going to be the standard that says you both have an argument, but theirs is right, and you're going to have to submit to that one because they're right. who's the ultimate lawgiver? If society is the ultimate lawgiver, then every individual is entitled to their individual right, and no one is greater than the other because morality has been defined by the United States of America. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because all it means is that if we go by society as the ultimate lawgiver, pretty soon there will be no more laws, because this is always stepping on this one.
Yep.
This one's always stepping on this one, and it goes on and on, and it doesn't get any better, it gets worse.
Yep.
Everything, yeah,
Everything's great, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I can tell y'all, working with teens, that by and large, they don't like that. They don't like great. They want to know. They want to know. Give me something solid to put my feet on so I can build my life on it. So individual relativism says this, and tell me if we're not here, and then maybe I'll throw this out there while I read this and y'all tell me your opinion. I don't know. When did this start exactly? Because I'd say in the 30s and 40s and 50s, we were, with all the little problems I've had with certain parts of our theology and all, we as a nation were very theistic, and we knew which bathroom to go to. Okay? A lot of you guys were growing up. And we did when I was growing up, but things had already crept in. So I don't know when this started exactly. I really don't. I don't know if we can pin it on any certain decade, 60s maybe, I don't know. Free love and whatnot. Was that it? Individual relativism, all points of view are equally valid, and truth is relative to each individual. So what we're arguing here is if you let a culture define truth, then within that culture, every individual will say, well, my truth is just as great as the culture's truth. Why are you stepping on my toes here? My toes should not be stepped on. But when they do that, and they erase a law that's stepping on their toes, they're stepping on other people's toes. You can't, every action has a reaction. You can't not have rules. Yeah, it's going to step on your toes. So where does this stop? So at this point, let me show you this picture. All right, what color is that?
Black and white.
What is it?
Blue and brown.
Really? What color do you see? I see gold and white as plain as day.
That's all I ever saw when it
Who
was,
sees black and blue?
it was on the computer.
Most people see it black and blue or gold and white.
Brown and blue. I see brown and black. I see brown and blue.
Oh, real?
Can you kill these for a second? Sorry, dude, I know I'm working you back there.
Even when they kept saying on the computer what color it is, and I'd
I
be
saw
like,
gold and white.
"Where's
Yeah, I saw gold and white.
How could you see anything but gold and
Right,
white?
you can see black and blue.
The dress is black and blue, supposedly.
Insane.
Yes.
I've never seen black and blue. I see gold and white.
Yeah.
Gold and white.
And scientifically, I can't explain exactly what happens, but a minority of people, like 25% or so, see gold and white because their eyes assume it's daytime when the picture was taken, and it eliminates the blue light rays, as far as I understand. So what I'm getting at is some things are relative. That is relative to your DNA. Whatever. Did anybody see black and blue?
Yes, yes. All I do see.
Mike, you saw black and blue?
Insane.
Really?
It's insane.
I don't see how you don't see gold and white here. I really don't.
I don't see
You don't see white? Really? What do you see?
Where is white?
What? Hold up.
All there is white.
White gold.
All right. Okay, white, and
That's
then
right.
gold.
Right.
It's gold.
Gold and white.
Gold and white.
You see either black or brown.
Every time I've ever looked at it.
Me too.
But I see
But my wife's like, oh, that's black and blue. Are you smoking crack? That's gold.
I'm wondering the same thing.
There you go. Oh, we got John Madden back there. Look at it. All right, that's gold. All that's gold.
Did they say something about like people?
all that is white.
That's white.
That's
Yeah.
white.
That's blue. That's
John
white.
Madden.
That's blue.
That's white.
Did they say that extremely intellectual people see gold?
Colorblind, right?
Yeah, that's it.
I think they said psychopaths see black and blue, and then, normal folks see gold and white. Yes, ma'am.
What color are the words?
they're white.
They are white.
You take those words and put on that dress is not white.
That's your opinion, though. I don't see. I see a shaded white. Is what I see.
Shaded, okay, shaded.
But it's still white.
Still white.
There's no way.
It's blue.
We'll go outside and argue the grass is not green. It's still green.
Okay, so I think the actual color of the dress is actually black and blue. I think,
But
but
there's no thinking it is, brother.
I did, and it's been a while. I think my wife showed me that and said, "What color do you think this dress is?" And I said, "Well, why are you asking me? It's white and gold." She said, "Oh, that's so weird. I think it's black and blue." Well, it can't be both. It is a color. It's one or the other, and it can't be both. I've tried in my mind. I've closed my eyes when we first did this, and I would think black and blue, and I'd open them like, okay, I've never seen black and blue. Yeah. I mean, we're the smart ones. Like, what are we?
There's something over to the side that's spotted that looks more black
Shady.
than the rest
Something about
of it.
certain highly intellectual people assume that it's daylight when the picture's taken. I'm kidding. Some people assume it's daylight when the picture's taken, and their mind tells their eyes, don't look at the blue rays in there. So I mean, I think that demonstrates relativism pretty good. That's what my mind went to. And here's the deal: based on your eyes and your DNA, it will dictate how you see that. But the truth of the matter is, it is not a white and gold dress, which blows my mind. It really, the designers did that on purpose, and I think they did, and it just messed with people's brains. I don't know why, but there are things that are relative. If you go to Europe and say which is the correct side of the road to drive on, they will be opposite of us, and it's not a moral issue. So what they're going to try to do is take non-moral issues and say, just like that dress, you can't tell people what's right and wrong. I still don't see how you see black and blue. I really don't. You could not convince me that it's black and blue for nothing, because my brain told me it's white and gold.
All you black and blue people, when after this is over with, you come up here and I'll show it to you on the computer.
But it is black and blue. Right. It's a lot like church, isn't it? Dad, I don't have to wear a suit. Oh, brother, I don't wear a suit. So that's relativism right there, isn't it? I mean, y'all were convinced that you're right, period. So what do we appeal to find out what's really the case? You would need to get the maker of the original dress and put the original thing in front of you and say, in person, not in a picture, because in person your eyes aren't going to play those tricks. And in person it's as black and blue as it can be, which is still I don't get, but that's what they tell me and I will believe them. So when you get to individualistic relativism, what are you going to appeal to? If we're both convinced, if a confused person is convinced that they can go to any bathroom they want, and I'm convinced that a man should not be in the bathroom with my daughters and wife, somebody's toes are going to get stepped on. They have to get stepped on. There has to be a right and wrong, they have to get stepped on. And if they're mine, it's fine. But toes have to be stepped on. Who decides which toes get stepped on? We used to appeal to the theistic moral law and say, well, guys shouldn't go to the bathroom with girls. And now we've broken down into, and I don't know where it started, I really don't, but now in America we're really close to individual relativism. I think we're there. I don't think everybody is, but I think a lot of people are. And we as theistic or Christian people, when we voice out absolute truths, we're called bigoted, right? Who are you to judge? Well, I'm not, but I mean, come on, man. There's a right and there's a wrong. And you get called bigoted and you sound like you're ignorant, some sort of backwoods, ignorant redneck that still actually believes in some sort of a Bible. But again, the flip side of that is, if we aren't backwoods, redneck, whatever, bigoted people, the other side of that is individualistic relativism. And you can get into a society and do anything you want. Because we're not bigoted anymore, there's no God, you can go anywhere you want to go. So let's look at Judges chapter 2, if we could. And I want to read something. I want to read something where my mind went biblically when I thought of relativism. Judges chapter 2, verse... Well, let me read. You go to Judges chapter 2. I'm going to go to Judges 17. And if you're familiar with the Old Testament, Judges 16. This phrase is repeated over and over in the book of Judges. We'll stay in Judges 2, but Judges 18:1 says this. And in those days there was no king in Israel. Anybody know the rest of this? And everybody did that which was right. How many times have you heard that preached on?
Well, that particular phrase is just over and over and over and over.
It is. It's
They
sickening.
kept returning to it. Oh,
Yep.
And then they did not like it.
God will send a judge, deliver them. Samson was one of them.
And
Then-
they did, and they got overtaken.
Right. Right. So here's what I'm looking at. If that's what we're getting to as a society, and I don't think we're there yet. I think a lot of people are. But I don't know if the tidal wave has, you know what I mean? Maybe it has. Maybe I'll see that differently. I think the next election would go a long ways for the tidal wave. I'm more afraid of that than their policies on foreign whatever. I'm afraid that the next president is going to be individual relativist and the tidal wave pushes over. And then, my goodness, folks, where are we going to go? Where are we going to move to?
Today, Charles Stanton,
Mm-hmm.
he's got a book out about the tidal wave.
Ooh.
And he says that the moral condition of the United States being that it is,
Mm-hmm.
and the way it is heading, that it's going to be like a tsunami that
Yep.
and come and destroy the United States.
And that hasn't happened yet, but we got to be close, aren't we? I mean, if you look back at Germany, it started with high school and mainly college. And when they persuaded the 18 to 22-year-olds that there is no God, within 20 or 30 or 40 years you had Holocaust. So I think we're in the stage now in America in the last maybe 10, 20 years, we're convincing them that there is no God. We're talking them out of that. So I think the tidal wave is very close.
I remember studying.
Very scary.
Gideon. All it took was one generation.
Right.
They didn't teach them about God, they forgot all the stuff, and one
Right.
generation and they became godless.
Well,
That's
you're
scary.
that's what I'm about to read right here. Judges chapter 2, verse 2. If I can find it, and let me see here. Yeah. You shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You shall tear down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice. Why have you done this? Therefore also said that I will not drive them out before you, but they shall be thorns in your side. Then you get to verse 10, and it's going to, when all that generation had been gathered to their fathers, so they died. So Joshua, given the promised land, he goes in, lots of battles, lots of killing, lots of people getting driven out of the country, but they didn't fully obey. So when Joshua and all of his, I've got an ESV at home, and it says Joshua and all the elders, basically the leaders of that country, when they all died, another generation arose after them who did not know the Lord nor the work which he had done before Israel. So they did not know the scriptures, they had not been taught them, and they had not been told the testimony. So, I mean, this is perfect. You have the scriptures that you intellectually discuss, but then you make it personal by telling your children, you know, God not only tells you he will provide, let me tell you what he has done for us back when you don't remember maybe as a child, and you give the personal side.
They were created people.
Yeah, write it on there. Yeah, sit down and, yep. So they were not doing as they commanded. When all that the generation had gathered to their fathers, another generation rose up after them that did not know the Lord or the work which he had done before them. Then the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals or the other gods. They forsook the Lord God of their fathers who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. And I didn't look at the year, as far as years, but this isn't long after Egypt. This is a couple of generations. And I look at the 40s and 50s and how theistically strong, and morally strong the country was. World War II, and we weren't perfect, obviously, but morally, we were kind of an upright country in a lot of ways compared to now. Now, 70 years, and it's a whole nother. If I could quote you some professors and what they're telling your grandkids, here, not in Europe, not in Germany, here, you would ask yourself, how do they have a job?
But think about, and you're talking about, it didn't take just a couple of generations here.
Yep.
When the towers were attacked in New York City, 2 weeks after that, the churches were full.
Yep, record attendance.
Took a month.
Mm-hmm.
They were back doing the same thing all over again, forgot about everything. So, it just kind of gives you a description of where we are now.
It doesn't take long. So that's verse 11. Verse 12. And they forsook the Lord God of their fathers who had brought them out of the land of Egypt, and they followed other gods from among the gods of the people who were all around them, the ones that were not supposed to live there. They were supposed to be gone. And God told them, kick them out or they're going to enslave you. And they didn't. Do you have something else, brother?
No, I'm
Preach on. So then you got, where are we at? Verse 12. Verse 13, they forsook the Lord and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. The anger of the Lord was hot against Israel. He delivered them, being gracious as he is. And then you got Judges 17:1. No, I don't need to read that. Let me read verse 17 and 18. I think is what I meant there. And Judah went with his brother Simeon. They attacked the Canaanites. I don't think that's where I want to be either. What did I write down? 17. Judges 17 and 18. I think the point was, well, I know what it was. After Judges 2, when you start reading the chapters, well, it is what I meant. Hang on, bear with me. You got 10 minutes. When you start a new chapter, a lot of them start by saying, there was no king in Israel, which is that was God's king. This is supposed to be a theocracy. So you've got God's king. They don't have a king anymore. They have no spiritual oversight or leadership. It breaks down into individual relativism. And then you start getting some really crazy stories about the Jews who not long ago were a very morally upright country. Things like a woman, and I hate to be, Micah, do you remember Micah chapter 18? Where's it at? Bear with me.
You want to
I'll
talk
find it.
about 17 verse 6 from Judge?
17:6?
Yeah.
I'm looking for Micah, and I don't know how I wrote it wrong. But basically, you have the beginning of a cult. You have Micah having an image made out of silver. He hires a priest, and he begins a religion. False religion. And for some reason, I can't find it.
It's chapter 17 talking about
Is it chapter 17?
one, Micah and Bob and
It would help if I was in the right book. This is a new Bible, and the verses don't start in one column. They're everywhere. It drives me nuts. Can't find the right one. Here we go.
17,
Sorry?
Judge 17
Yeah.
and 6 make
Yeah, you got to be, the man Micah, verse 5, had a shrine and made an ephod and household idols. Micah's a Jew. He concentrated one of his sons who became his priest. And in those days there was no king in Israel, no leadership. Everyone did that which was right in his own eyes. And it goes on and on. Then you have a young Levite that comes by. Who are the Levites? They were the priestly tribe. So you got a Levite, comes by Micah's house. Micah hires him as a priest. And he's like, well, yeah, I'd like to be a priest. And then you get to chapter 18. Somebody takes a wife or a concubine. They go into a town. The lady is raped to death. The Jewish man cuts her body into 12 pieces and sends it out to the leaders of the 12 tribes. Like, hey, we better wake up. This is getting crazy. And if you go on to read Judges, there are some very ungodly things that start happening. And when you read the book of Judges and your stomach is turned by the end of the book, you go back to chapter 2 and say, how did this start? And you have a lack of knowledge, disobedience, then you had idolatry, and then you had sexual perversion and violence. That is the stage. Judges chapter 2. Judges 2 sets the stage. Judges 1 is Joshua dying. Judges 2 sets the stage. You get to 16, 17, 18, and so on, and you've got every sort of crazy stuff you can imagine. And it all started from one generation not educating the next one. The next one that kind of rejects God, don't have the knowledge of God, they disobey God, and then it turns into idolatry. And you could make the argument that idolatry came and then disobedience. Either way, it's kind of about the same thing. Idolatry being the problem here. And when you kick God out of society, an idol will take its place. You're never non-religious. Don't let anybody tell you that. Nobody's non-religious. Everybody worships something. Yeah. Anybody else? Does this make sense? Are we understanding it? Seriously, I mean, could you sit down and have a good discussion about this? And you can look at if somebody doesn't believe this is the Bible, you can look at that as a history book and say, you know, historically, we know where it leads when you take God out of a society. We see it. We can look at the Bible, you can look at Europe, you can look at Germany. It's very easy to figure out what happens. You can look at socially, Venezuela, you can Google them and see the troubles they're
I don't
having.
know if this is true, but I did read this week and I tried to dig into it deeper, but that China is now the fastest growing Christian nation. Of course, it's underground, but, and this person wrote, wow, when we're going to start sending missionaries to the United States. Yeah.
Mm. They used to be predicted. Spurgeon used to predict that. I think it's Spurgeon. You can look at Spurgeon's time and where he preached in London, right? Yeah, Tabernacle. And you can see his predictions about what was happening in his societies and the things he said about his society in Europe that would happen if we continue to erase God out of society. So this isn't rocket science. I think what troubles me is the younger generation coming up now that hasn't maybe been taught or has rejected our religion because we're old fogies and we're stupid apparently. I don't really honestly think they understand where relativism takes them. I really don't think. I think they will, but I think it'll take a few years for them to taste it for a while and eat it, and then in 20 years, they'll say, well, you know what, doggone, we were wrong, they were right, this didn't work, and then where are you going to be? You know? So that scares me because I think that's going to happen. I think it's a cycle that almost has to take place because we don't take advice well. Anybody else? Comments, concerns? No? Next week, where do we need to go with this? I need a question or something to answer. Come on, people. I need teenagers, Colton. I need teenagers in here. Colton's always good for a question. Hey, you know, we think it's late, but man, how long do we sit in that teen house sometimes? 9:30, 10 o'clock discussing the discussion. All right, go ahead. Yeah. My kid's over there. I'm hungry, Dad. Cole's got more questions, son. Be quiet.
I had a guy start working with me the other day, came from another dealership. He's 23. First thing he said to me, like one of the first things he said, because I hate Christians. I said, man, we need best friends. I told him
Let's do lunch.
No, I told him that. He's my partner now, and he was supposed to come over today, but something ended up happening. He knows I'm a Christian, and he's like, dude, I hate Christians. You're like the first one I've ever been friends with. And we keep talking about stuff. The other guy was a physics major. We just started working there. Me and him was like very interesting. We really wanted to crack talks.
Was he an atheist?
I'm not.
I mean,
sure.
self-professing. You can say you hate atheists because you can say they're all like Hitler. Because I know you don't, but it's gonna get. I hate Christians because my uncle was one and he was a preacher and he cheated on his wife or something stupid. And now he hates all. You know, then you say, well, I hate you atheists because Hitler was an atheist, and surely you're all the same. And they're gonna go, whoa, 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 dude, I'm not Hitler.
Oh, I see.
Well, I'm not your uncle, so, you know. Right? I don't wanna go to church. It's full of hypocrites.
I'll tell them one more.
Yeah, well, there's room for one more. Come on, brother.
They laugh at that. But his girlfriend was raised like super Christian and Methodist, something like that. And he was talking about a conversation me and him were having about apologetics. And him and his girlfriend got into an argument. And like she's standing firm, like she's like, no, look, I believe in God, you know, and so it's
Yeah.
the whole
Good.
thing and coming to the dealership, getting a job, getting my partner. I mean, that's
Speak the
very-
truth in love, yeah, that's good.
Isn't it? Oh, he's been working at Toyota for.
Paired him up with you.
How good is that? I was like, yes.
Anybody, is that all? Are we good? Perfect, let's pray. Lord, I thank you again for this time and this place you've furnished for us to sit down comfortably and discuss society and discuss your word and how we can relate it to society and how it is relevant, if not more relevant than it has ever been in any generation. So we pray again for clarity and for wisdom. And keep us safe the rest of this week. In Christ's name, amen. Thank you guys. I enjoyed it. Again, if you have any things during the week, just text me or call me or email and we'll answer them.